What's up, folks? Mike here at Well & Watches. Welcome to the video, and this is episode 3 where we follow along on the reassembly of the Seiko Pogue. And in this video I'm just going to be touching on the two main things that I like to do with nearly every single watch before I get onto the full reassembly of the movement, and that is the preparation stage. So what I like to do is I like to make sure that the balance jewels are lubricated and that the mainspring barrel is also completed and done. Once those two things are done, I reassemble the whole movement in one foul swoop. But obviously, as mentioned in previous videos, I'm going to be breaking down this movement into separate little subsections and show you how it's assembled in little bite-sized pieces, which makes things a bit easier. So the rest of this video I'm going to show you the balance jewels being lubricated and the mainspring barrel. And then in episode 4, which will come after this video, I'm going to show you the remaining assembly of the movement stage by stage. That's going to take a little bit longer because I am still shooting in 4K, so some of the file sizes are quite large and I have to mess around in the editing to try and reduce the file sizes. But so far it's working out quite well. If you enjoy my videos and you've been enjoying my channel and you want to help contribute to the channel, you can always check out my Patreon page. There's links in the description below if you want to go and check that out. There's no staggered tier system. You're not going to see special edition videos just for Patreons. All my videos are going to be free, but if you want to help contribute towards the channel, you can do so. Please go and check that out. But now we're going to move on to the next section of the video, which is the lubrication and the mainspring barrel. So, see you in a moment. Okay folks, so now we're going to remove the cap jewel from the balance so that we can lubricate it and treat it with epilame. So we're going to need some Rodico, a pair of fine tip tweezers and some pegwood. And we're going to twist the shock spring off the top of the balance. There's a small cutout in the jewel block that allows you to remove this very small spring, and once you've got two of the parts of the spring out, the spring will be quite easy to remove, and you can just put the spring to one side. Once you have done that, you can take the jewel out. This is why you need the fine tip tweezers to try and get the jewel out. If the jewel doesn't want to come out with the tweezers, you can just use a very fine piece of Rodico, twist it up between your fingers. And now we're going to separate the two parts of the jewel so that they can go into the epilame bath for treatment. So we're going to put the jewels in some epilame for a couple of minutes, and what the epilame will do is it will create a sort of hydrophobic effect on the jewels, so that when I place any oil on it, the oil will stay pretty much in the position that it's meant to stay in and it won't spread out. And this effect is quite long lasting, and it should last in between servicing and even after it's been cleaned in the next service. The effect of the epilame should last even further than that. So we're going to take the jewels out and we're going to dry them on this piece of tissue. Now, when handling jewels, I would highly recommend a blunt or wide nose pair of tweezers, as this will reduce the risk of the jewels flying off into the distance. If you use very fine tip tweezers, you have to have a very accurate hand control, and it makes the job a little bit more difficult than it has to be. So we replace the jewel setting back onto the Rodico so that we can apply some lubrication. And the oil that I'll be using here is Mobius 9010. Now, the amount of lubrication you actually want is about 3/4 the size of the actual jewel itself. If you put too little, it'll dry out really quick and it'll disappear. If you put too much, it'll eventually spread when it gets in contact with the upper or lower section of the jewel block. So you want about 3/4, half to 3/4 coverage as central to the jewel as possible. And we're just going to place the cap back onto the jewel and turn it over. Now we can replace the jewel back into the balance cock and then refit the shock spring. Now I'm only going to show this side of the movement. It's the same procedure on the other side. The jewel and shock setting on the dial side is exactly the same as the balance, so you just repeat this process twice over. Just be very careful when picking up the jewel, or the jewel spring should I say, because they do have a tendency to want to fly off. But once you've got it in there, use the pegwood and the fine tip tweezers to gently coax it in and around at the same time, and you'll get the shock spring back in there with no problem. And there we go, there's the jewel back in position. Give it a quick check, make sure it's not askew, because if it's askew you'll notice that the balance won't turn very freely, but that all seems to be just fine. Okay, moving on to the mainspring barrel now. We're going to remove the mainspring from the barrel. It has gone through the cleaner, but obviously the spring is still going to be dirty and covered in the old grease that was used. So we'll remove the spring and we'll clean that by hand. Just take care when removing the spring from the barrel, because it is under tension and it will have a tendency to want to fly off into the distance. So just use your thumbs like I'm doing in the video here, and you can slowly let out all the power from the spring and get it out of the barrel. As you can see, some of the old dry grease has come out, so we're going to clean the barrel out using a glass fibre brush pen. And the glass fibres actually get right into the nooks and crannies, and you're able to get rid of all the old dried out grease. And then we're going to place this in a little mesh basket and clean it in some essence to make sure there's no trace of the old grease left. We'll do the same for the barrel lid, because that's also got the dried grease residues left all over it as well. We'll both get them in the cleaning solution, and we'll then move on to cleaning the spring. So we're going to use a piece of folded tissue. We're going to soak that in a little bit of essence, and then just very gently pull the spring through the tissue. You don't want to pull too hard, and you don't want to squeeze the tissue too tight, otherwise you'll end up malforming the spring. But you just want to give it enough to remove all the dirt and grease. Renata Essence is really good at getting rid of dry caked on grease, so that's what I use here. As you can see, a lot of old grease. So now we're going to tip out the barrel onto some tissue so we can give it a dry. If you have a small handheld puffer, you can use that, similar to this version one here. But I have a compressor air system in my workshop, so I'm going to use the air compressor pen to dry off any remaining essence that's inside the barrel. And then on the lid. Okay, so we've got the barrel winder here, or the mainspring barrel winder. We have the mainspring, and we have the barrel itself, and the grease that I'm going to use for this Seiko is one of Seiko's graphite greases. So now the spring is all greased up, we're going to wind that into the mainspring winder. This is a Bowley winder. If any of you are interested in what kind of winder this is a very old and very well used Bowley winder. So we're going to wind that mainspring in, and as you can see, that's all wound in there, nice and ready to go into the barrel. But before that, we've got to line the barrel wall with some grease. I like to even it out at about 4 spots around the barrel wall. You don't need an absolute massive amount of grease, you just need a small amount, a couple of millimeters across in 4 equal positions around the barrel wall, and the mainspring will do the rest of the work. So now we're just going to put the mainspring inside the barrel, push down on the tool, and the mainspring's in position. So now there's a little bit of excess grease on the spring, so I'm going to use a little bit of Rodico just to clean off the excess grease, because you don't want that coming out of the barrel whilst it's in use. Just a little dab will do. So now we're going to put in the barrel arbor, and we're going to snap that into position and then rotate it so that the hook catches the whole end on the inside of the barrel. And then we can replace the lid back on the barrel, just loosely, give it a little snap, and then we'll use a barrel closing tool to finish the job. Apologies for the angle of the camera. It seems that the barrel's right at the top of the picture. I didn't realise where the frame was. We just use a barrel closing tool there to snap the barrel closed, and then we'll give the barrel a quick wipe over with some Rodico to absorb any excess grease on the outside. And that's the barrel complete and done, ready just before final assembly. And that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.